Good evening. I'll call to order the Board of Education meeting for Monday, September 22nd, 2025. Kristen, would you provide a roll call, please?
Bridget?
Here.
Tracy?
Here.
Eric?
Here.
Mark?
Here.
Brian?
Here.
Ann?
Here.
And Aaron.
Here. I'll verify that we have a quorum present. Please rise.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tracy, would you read the school board mission statement, please?
Sure. Working together to ensure high levels of learning for all.
Kristen, was public notice given?
Public notice was given to the requesting news media. The agenda was posted in school district buildings and on the district website.
Are there any adjustments or changes to tonight's published agenda?
Mr. President, I request to move item number 13, trip request, to before item number 9.
With that, I would make a motion to approve the agenda with the following revision, moving agenda item 13 to before agenda item 9 to accommodate a guest.
Second.
Motion by Ann, second by Tracy to approve the published agenda with the following adjustment, moving item 13 to follow item 9, or to precede item 9. Are there any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Tonight's agenda is approved. With that adjustment, we have no request for public input on the published agenda, and as a result, we'll move directly into item number 13. And with that, we welcome Karen Motzek, an English teacher from OHS.
Hello. I am coming before you this evening to request school board approval for a student trip for the summer, July 2028. The trip is called Literature in England. It is a 10-day excursion that takes students through England and stopping at various literary sites along the way. We get to participate in a storytelling workshop, theater workshop, and then tour of Globe Theater and the opportunity to see a performance at the Globe Theater on our last night in London. Are there questions for me?
What part of this trip are you most excited about?
All of it. So this is a trip that I led. I had 6 students. The trip was supposed to happen in 21, and then COVID happened, and we pushed it to 22. And I only had 6 students, and it was an amazing trip. We landed in Manchester, so we were up north in the Lake District, which is gorgeous. It's almost like the Scottish Highlands with the steep hills and the lakes, small villages. I loved Wordsworth's museum in Grasmere up north. We got to do Stratford-upon-Avon and see Shakespeare's birthplace, which of course I loved. The students enjoyed seeing Oxford. We got to tour part of the Oxford campus where parts of Harry Potter had been filmed. And then the surprise that the students came away loving was the storytelling workshop and then seeing a performance at the Globe Theater. They weren't excited about it because it was Henry VIII, but it was told from the perspective of his queen and not from Henry, so they'd revised it a little bit. And so even though we were standing for 3 hours on a concrete floor, it was an amazing experience. It was very immersive, and the kids were like, that's the best part. And so I'm really excited to be able to take students back to the Globe.
So, Karen, I'm always so excited for students to have this kind of opportunity. Wonder if you could touch on what you're anticipating the budget to be
Yes.
for students for the trip, and then whether there are any fundraising opportunities that you have in mind or that could be organized related to it.
The total cost of the trip is $4,520 per student. I plan the trips 2 years out because over 30 months or so, that brings the monthly payment down to about $138-ish. give or take. And that's affordable, more affordable for families. Just to put that in context, when I did the literature in England back in 2022, that trip cost $4,250. Scotland in 24 was $4,440, and Ireland, I'm not sure why it's so much more, but it's $4,629, which we're doing Ireland in 26. I moved the trip from June to July because it saves about $400 per student doing it in July instead of June. Our earliest departure date would be July 15th. Our latest return would be July 30th, so it would be that last half of July. I've requested the 18th through the 27th, but that will all depend on availability in terms of the hotels and flights. Fundraising, I always tell parents, if you want to organize a fundraiser, please, please, please organize a fundraiser. I typically don't. It's just one more thing that I don't really have time to organize. But
I understand. Thank you.
What students are eligible to take this trip?
So I will open this up to students who are entering 9th grade in the fall of 27. So they will have finished 9th grade by the time the trip happens, through seniors who graduate in 28. So if they graduate in May, then they can come on the trip in July.
Thank you.
Karen, how many students would you anticipate?
The Ireland trip has about 30 students going. I also have 7 adults going, paid adult travelers. This trip, I want it to be only students. I had paid adult travelers who went to Scotland, and then I opened up the Ireland trip for adults, and I would like to do a trip with just students. I think it changes the dynamics when moms or dads are on the trip, and I would like the kids to be more immersed in the trip. So,
That being said, do you have a limit of kids that you would take?
I think we'd have to keep it right around 34-ish because we'll fill. If I can fill a bus, I would fill a bus. But then if we have 34 kids, then I would need 6 chaperones, and so that would fill a bus.
Would the chaperones then be like other teachers at
Yes.
the high school then?
Yep. So I've over the years I've kind of created a chaperone team. I have an English teacher who travels with me. I have 2 male teachers. I have a female teacher, and then I've been inviting a college professor friends that I have to come along as another female chaperone. We've typically had me and then 4 chaperones on the trip.
So one more question. So with, if this is approved tonight, eligible kids will be entering 9th grade in 27, so they would be current
Seventh
seventh
grade.
graders? So do you kind of market, or how do you engage them in the possibility?
So in the past, I have sent out, I've asked the school secretaries, could you please send out an email to all the families of students who are in this grade through this grade? And then they do that, and it's worked pretty well, especially now that people know about the trips. So I'm really thankful to the administrative assistants in both of the schools, the middle school and the high school, for helping me out with that.
Thank you.
Team, any other questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the trip request by Karen Matzik, OHS English teacher, for the student trip to England in July of 2028.
Second.
Motion by Tracy, seconded by Bridget, to approve the trip request for a July 2028 trip to England as presented by Karen Matzek. Any further questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Tim, we'll now continue with recognition items and donations.
All right, it is with great Hilltopper pride that I share the following donations for all of us to acknowledge, recognize, and share our gratitude. The first one is a $550 donation from OHS class of 2005 for the OHS Acts of Kindness Fund and money towards a new picnic table. The next item is $1,000 from Dave and Linda Stark for the Eagle Bluff Elementary Special Education Department. And the last bullet to acknowledge is $1,440 from Jim's Grocery Bag Fund of the La Crosse Community Foundation for the district food pantry. We thank them.
Thank you, Ben. And while these donations don't reach the clip level for board approval, they're all very much appreciated and recognized. I don't think we could do everything we do without kind offers like these. So, Ben, we'll stick with you for note or comments related to board recognition.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is a privilege for me to share and acknowledge the board. Now, I need to share with you, this is a little premature that I share this with you because board recognition week is not until October 5th through the 11th. However, this is our only opportunity to share this with you prior to those dates. Hopefully, we're able to share our gratitude and thanks with you all year long, but this is a special week for all of you. As I think this is not quite 50, and 14-year superintendent, I know how important school boards are. And as I've started my work here, I shared with all of you that we are committed to excellence, and we have a vision to be a model school district, which means to set the bar in everything that we do. And it really starts with the board setting the tone in terms of utilizing best practices and governance. And in my short time here with all of you, I've certainly observed that, and I'm looking forward to our board development session after this meeting for us to discuss ways that we can continually improve and set goals for us to get even better as we work together as a board. Years ago, I was listening to a speaker, and I believe that this is still true to this day. They said that they've done many surveys in terms of elected officials across our country. And it continues to be that the elected officials of school board are the highest ranked as it relates to respect from community members. So I think that says a lot, right? And that's comparing you as elected officials to, of course, the executive branch at the national level and all the way to the state level and in city and county government. But I think that says a lot, and people thank you, and people trust you, and people recognize the important work that you do. I want to personally thank all of you for accepting me as your new superintendent, and I'm really looking forward to ongoing work with all of you. So, thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank
you.
We'll shift gears into our informational and discussion items and start with administrator reports. Start with the high school.
Thank you. At our next board meeting, we'll have our student rep to be introduced to the board and for that person to start their board report. Tomorrow we have our celebration of Learning Day, and it follows the pattern of the past, but one change is that in the afternoon, instead of 9th and 10th graders traditionally doing a 1 through 8 abbreviated schedule, 18 minutes long, they'll be doing 5 different rotations through what I would call academic skill-based areas. So, for example, email inbox management and sending email is one session. Managing Google Drive, which if you think of what maybe a lot of our Google Drives look like, it's an area of need, particularly with students. Time management, all the different pieces, they'll be rotating through those in the afternoon while our juniors are on college tours and our seniors are focusing on post-secondary activities tomorrow.
I think I could use some work on email inbox management.
I was just thinking
You have
the
an
same
extra
thing.
seat in that session.
We'll see how it goes.
If you'd like to share those presentations, feel free.
Middle school, Ben.
Yes. A few notes for you tonight, middle school. This week we started music lessons for band, choir, and orchestra. And it took a lot of work and a lot of conversations, but working with our music teachers as well as all the rest of our teachers, we found a way to get the vast majority of those lessons during topper time instead of during core instruction. So they always try to avoid core instruction as much as possible, but one of the revamps we did with topper time this year was to partially structure it so that music lessons could happen almost entirely during topper time. So probably about 90% of them are happening then, which is fantastic because students are missing less instructional time then, but still getting the valuable lessons time. And some of them are small groups, some are sectionals and things of that nature. Speaking of music, our band students are looking forward to playing at the football game Friday night with their high school counterparts, and so that's always a great opportunity and experience for students. And then finally, just on the same vein as what Jared's talking about with managing life and everything like that, we had a renewed emphasis this year on planners, and so our planners double as their passes if they need to go somewhere during class. And we weren't sure how it was going to go, but the 99% of the kids have just adjusted, adapted, and they're carrying the planner around and they're using it to keep themselves organized and on top of things. And it's been a great success so far. And so just a fun thing to highlight.
Great, thank you. Turn to elementary. I think, Kelly, you're going to start?
Yes. A few things to update you on. We have family and teacher conferences coming up this week, so we're excited to welcome families back into the buildings. They got to sign up today, and we've had a lot of families already sign up. So our goal, of course, is always to get all of our families into the building. We also have Love and Logic for early childhood and anyone in the community with children ages 2 to 6 that we're going to be offering. Sarah Muma Fleury and I will be doing a nighttime class, which is 5 sessions for Love and Logic for our families. We have a couple community things that we've been involved with. We've done a lot of celebrations last week around Hmong New Year that happened over the weekend. And then this upcoming week, we have Oktoberfest family visits and students attending special festers this week in the community. As in relation to our strategic plan goals, we have our collaborative teams working on the personal reading plans for students now that we have all of our assessments done, and we've been collaborating in our teams. I just joined, for example, my 2nd grade team this morning. We worked with the academic interventionists around how to best support our students who need that support so that we can continue to work towards those goals. We've been looking at our SABRS data that's come in and connecting students to resources and following up with students that maybe need some support in certain areas that might be labeled as high risk from that assessment. And then lastly, we had our first On a Play group, and On a Play is a program for ages 3 and 4 students who aren't yet eligible for 4K, and it's run by one of our early childhood special ed teachers, Brianna Gibbs, and it's run out of her classroom at Northern Hills. So we have a long wait list of families that want to participate, but we had a very full vestibule at Northern Hills on Friday of families excited to drop their kids off with very little tears. We were all surprised that there were very little tears of just the children coming in, and they were there for a few hours on Friday, and we're excited to have them back next week, I think is the next one. So.
Great. Abby? Okay, great. Thank you very much. We'll move into building project updates and turn back to high school. Jared.
Thank you. Most of the work has been in finishing the locker rooms, finishing the tech ed area. The tech ed area is very close to being done. The air handler is being turned on this week for the various machines. And then, as you're seeing on the screen, the framing up in the new choir area, as well as the classroom that's right next to it. And if we keep going down, the doors are being installed in all areas. So less plywood, more real doors. Keep moving. The bathrooms by the field house, the boys' bathroom was turned over to us today, the girls' bathroom last week. So it's great being back to having a full bathroom status for the high school again. And then you're seeing some of the finishing areas going on in the storage areas throughout the Fayette area. So coming together very quickly, and we're still looking at a completion date of probably around December 1st.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jared. What's going on at the middle school?
So, at the middle school, in terms of our construction, we are making final preparations this week to get students into the new art and tech ed rooms next week. And the spaces are amazing. Ms. Hatlovig and Ms. Carson are really excited, and they should be. They've waited longer than anybody to get into their new classrooms, so it's going to be great. Tomorrow, they're going to turn on and test out and do training with the dust collector, which I didn't know that was a thing. And it doesn't sound like a big thing, but it's a huge, complicated system of tubes and whatnots that someone's going to have to know how to run. So that's just part of our exciting is getting ready for those spaces. Everything else then after that is pretty much just the Boys and Girls Club stuff, which they're continuing to move. They were doing painting in there today, and so that is currently on track for sometime mid-October to be complete as well, and then we'll be pretty much wrapped up. So we're getting there.
You see, we're starting to plan a little bit for an open house.
Yep.
Kinda in November here, so that's really exciting.
It's very exciting, yes.
Thank you. Okay, we have another donation that we need to take a look at here from Tom's Grocery Bag Fund. Ben.
Well, we're very appreciative. I mean, $8,100 is a lot of money. And we're just very thankful that Tom's Grocery Bag Fund of La Crosse Community Foundation is donating those dollars for food needs for our students in our community. And we're an organization of student learning. We know that, but we know it's very difficult for student learning to occur if the conditions for learning aren't there. And certainly having food in your belly is one of those conditions that is very important. So it's just another example of the great generosity in our community, and we thank them for this great donation. And we'd ask that you accept this.
I would move for approval of that $8,100 donation from Tom's Grocery Bag Fund of the La Crosse Community Foundation for food needs for our students.
Second.
Motion by Mark, seconded by Brian, to approve a donation from Tom's Grocery Bag Fund of the La Crosse Community Foundation for food needs for students for a sum of $8,100. Are there any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that donation is graciously accepted with much appreciation. Ben, we'll turn now to a discussion about setting the start date for schools for the 25-26 year.
So it may seem a little early to start.
27.
Yeah, to start thinking about next school year's calendar already, but this is, it's really important that we start this early so that we can follow a process that will give us the most flexibility as we work together with stakeholders to come up with the best learning environment for our students for next school year. I'd like to remind all of you that we started school prior to September 1st this current school year. We started on August 25th. And believe it or not, we, I believe, have already finished our first month of school, or at least we're in the 5th week. So we've been in session, and we've done some informal surveying of buildings and principals, and it seems like things went really well with that early start date. Not to give you a history lesson, because you lived it, and I wasn't here for it, but the district did go through quite a lengthy process last year of surveying the community to get to a point where they would ask for an exception or an exemption from the Department of Instruction, and that process was followed through, and the department allowed for that, and they brought that to the calendar committee, and the process went forward, and the board approved that calendar. So here we are starting to think about next school year, and it's just a process. So one of the rationale that was used to get our exemption for this school year was the fact that our parochial schools start prior to September 1st, and we are responsible and obligated to provide transportation for our parochial school in the area, which is at least 4. So what I did to start the process was to reach out to those schools to see if they intended to continue that practice that they've had in the past, and indeed they do. So that rationale that we used for this year will still exist for next school year. Because DPI will only allow districts to do this by a year-to-year basis, we must follow then that same process, even though it seems like we may have just done it. So, for me to be able to write a request to the Department of Instruction for them to consider allowing us to start prior to September 1st, it begins with the board adopting a resolution that would allow us to do so. And that's what we're here to do tonight. Basically, what we're asking in this resolution is for the board to adopt something that would allow the calendar committee to consider options that would start school next year as early as August 24th. Again, we started this school year August 25th. Now, next year there will be some differences because Labor Day is later next school year, but that will be all discussions that the calendar committee will go through as they work with stakeholders on what the best options will be for next school year. Again, we can't have those discussions or even consider those things unless the board makes this resolution, allows me to write the letter to DPI. If they give us the green light to have those conversations, then I would continue to brief the board on where we're at in that process, and we would convene a large sector of the community to be part of this calendar committee to look at all options. And we would likely come up with some examples, an option A, B, or C, if you will, and discuss what the best possibilities will be. I have found, and most of you I think would agree with me, that students generally are ready to get back to school in late August, and they're ready to be done with school in late May. And it's difficult for learning to occur during those late months when we're getting into warm summer weather. It is also important to note that especially at the high school levels, that most of our activities start in full force, really that first week in August, if you will, where families really have little flexibility to do much traveling, if any, during those times. The other piece of rationale that the calendar committee and the board should consider, in my opinion, is the cost savings that this would bring to our taxpayers of our community, as we believe it's important to be strong stewards of taxpayer dollars. And it just doesn't make any sense at all for us to provide transportation to parochial schools for days or weeks without having our students on those buses. It just is not efficient, and it's not a good use of money, and that's another example of that. So with your approval this evening, I would just remind you that this is just one step in the process. The board has the final vote of what our calendar will be for the 26-27 school year, when you will actually adopt a calendar that will be presented to you at a later date. And I wouldn't imagine that would be for maybe at least a month or two, right? But we would like to get that out as soon as possible because, as you know, families are already beginning to make plans for the following year. And I don't know if there's any other important information for me to share other than what I shared with you. What you're doing tonight by approving this resolution is just one step in the process, and it's far from being final.
Team, I've asked Ann to read the resolution as drafted for a consideration, then we can open to questions and final consideration.
Resolution file number 2025-006, resolution on modification of school start date for 2026-27. Whereas pursuant to Wisconsin statute section 118.045, commencement of school term, the state of Wisconsin provides that public school districts cannot start school prior to September 1st. And whereas the school board may commence a school term prior to September 1st if it submits a written request to the Department of Public Instruction asking for an earlier start date, listing the extraordinary reasons for the earlier start date request. Whereas the School District of Onalaska is experiencing excessive costs associated with the transportation of pupils who attend private schools that start prior to September 1st. Be it resolved that the School District of Onalaska is officially requesting approval to commence the school term prior to September 1st, 2026, and establish local control in determining the school calendar by commencing the 2026-27 school year as early as August 24th, 2026. Be it resolved further that on September 22nd, 2025, the Board of Education for the School District of Onalaska passed this resolution in order to establish local control of the school calendar for the 2026-27 school year. It would be dated this date and signed by Aaron and Brian.
Okay, thank you, Ann. With that, team, are there any questions for the administration?
I don't think I have any questions, but obviously that cost is a significant part of this. I'm just kind of curious. It would be interesting to know how many of these requests are made to DPI each year.
Yeah, that's some information that I'm happy to get for the board. I can just share with you locally in the Cooley region that I am aware that at least 2 of our neighboring districts will be pursuing this or already have pursued this, and their board has already made this resolution. I do believe that there was 2 other districts that started prior to September 1st this year, other than us. So we started prior to September 1st. I believe La Crosse School District did, and also West Salem. Am I correct in saying that? All indicators are that those districts may consider the same, but I certainly can't speak for those. But we'll be in good company locally without us knowing the rest of the state.
Yeah, I think the third whereas, where it touches on the excessive costs associated with transportation, I just want to expand on that. So I was not on the board the last time that this came before us. Before the meeting, I was having a conversation with Janet, and I think it's important. Can you just share a little bit about that 5-mile boundary so we understand who we're busing and why this is important?
Sure. So for our private schools that are not located within the boundaries but have students within our boundaries that attend them, there's a state law that we have to transport within 5 miles. So that's why we're transporting to some of the schools in La Crosse, because part of the Catholic school system, we have some schools that are within that 5 miles, as well as some for West Salem. So the private schools also have their own transportation for school for those students that aren't a part of like that 5-mile boundary or within the actual boundary itself of that. So they have some cost as well as us.
Thank you. So I guess the important thing for me is, do we know when the private schools are planning to begin? Is it going to be after that August 24th? Is that why that's our earliest start?
When I had conversations with parochial school leaders, my first question was, did they intend to start prior to September 1st? Mm-hmm. All of them said yes. Most of them said that they haven't hammered out the exact start date yet, so they weren't able to say with certainty when that would be, other than they knew that they would continue on with their past practice of starting earlier. We certainly could consider prior to August 24th. When I was thinking about how we would be writing this, I thought, that if we started earlier than that, we might be getting into the mid-August, and I don't know. But the board does have the ability to, make that change.
Yeah, so I think that leads me to my concern, and that is the private and parochial schools are not required to start after September 1st, that's correct?
Yeah, there's no obligation to follow state law.
But we are obligated to transport their students.
That is correct.
Regardless of when they begin. So I just want that to be really clear, that this is like tens of thousands of dollars that our taxpayers have to spend to transport private schools, and it's kind of twisting our arm as the public school system to have to start based on when the private schools determine they want to start. And I support support the reason behind this resolution, but I'm wondering if in the future we don't consider a resolution where we ask to not have to be responsible for those transportation costs prior to our public school start date. So I think that's kind of the root of the issue here. So I just wanted that to be very clear.
I would just be interested to know, like, from the administrator's perspective, how it's gone with starting earlier. I mean, we had to start earlier because we had some construction projects, and then we started earlier this year because we made our first resolution. Do you feel like the attitude and the atmosphere in the schools, like, kids are ready to come back at the time that they're coming back? Or, as far as, Bridget's concerned about starting earlier?
I was on the calendar committee last year, and I can just say from the staff perspective, we've had a lot of positive staff feedback. Everyone on the calendar committee last year was very positive about the option to possibly start earlier again in August. And I would say too, from the student perspective, from what I've observed in the schools, students have been ready to return.
Thank you.
I'd like to just have a quick commentary on Bridget's comment, because I think that was really well said, and I appreciate you saying that. During our time working together, Board, I want you to be aware that in the past, in my previous superintendencies, I've always tried to put together a local legislative platform that we can utilize locally and inform our public, and also utilize as we go out and talk to our legislative leaders at the Capitol, on proposed legislation to change law. This very well could be a topic that we would like to have on our local legislative platform to be able to tell our story to the state leaders.
That's a good point. Any other questions? This does require approval.
I would make the motion to approve resolution file number 2025-006.
Second.
Motion by Mark, seconded by Brian, to approve the adoption of Resolution 2025-006, modification of school start date for the 2026-27 school year, as written in enclosure 15 and read by Ann. Are there any further questions or comments? All those.
We're going to take a roll call.
We can take a roll call.
Anne?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Bridget?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
And Aaron.
I'm yes. That motion is passed.
Okay, so just a point of information, Board, my next step then would be to craft a communication to send to the Department of Instruction, and I will share that communication with you prior to sending it.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is to review the 2025-26 preliminary budget adoption. We turn to Janet.
Yeah, you have two budget attachments for this item. One is a presentation. Oh, I have the wrong screen up. Let's try this again. Want this one. There. Okay, I apologize. Operator error. This is the first meeting of 3 that we will have a budget on the agenda. And tonight, what we're asking you to do is approve the budget that we will take to the budget hearing. So tonight is approving a budget to take to the budget hearing. Next meeting, we'll have a budget hearing. It's required by state law for a unified school district. And then the next meeting will adopt our original budget. So with getting 3 meetings in a row, while I have a lengthy presentation here. I know you do not want me to go through that in detail, so I will not. What I'm going to do tonight is concentrate more on what has changed since we adopted that original budget on June 23rd. Because remember, on June 23rd, we didn't have a state budget at that point in time. We had, and what we've also gotten since that time is our state equalization. So those are things that have come in at since that point in time. In a nutshell, the state budget was disappointing this year as far as for state equalization aid. As you can see in this chart, we've continuously had increases in state equalization aid, which buys down our local property taxes. And this year, there was no new money put into state equalization aid, which means that all of the school districts in the state will be, it's just going to be like a reshuffling of the money that's out there. Those districts that are growing will probably increase, and then those like us with a declining enrollment will have funding decrease. You can see here spendable money for schools, how that has been stagnant over the last few years. And this is an important slide when you're looking at the last period of time and how our revenue limit just has not been keeping up with inflation. And that gap for Onalaska, if we would just have inflationary increases every year, we'd have like $8.9 million more in our budget to spend. Our operating referendum this year is $5 million. It goes a good amount of way to close that gap, but it doesn't close the gap. Then we rely on operational referendum to help us close that gap, and you can see what these amounts are on this chart. Then there was some good news in our state budget. We had the revenue limit increase of $325. It's not more money, but it's an increase of $325 per student. And the best news that we received was the increase for categorical aid for special education. This is something that was some certain amount in the past and still is. And some certain means there's a certain amount of money that's allocated for it, and then that's divvied up amongst all of the school districts. It's not what's needed to cover the cost, it's a certain amount that's allocated. And as you can see in this chart, in 24-25, we're at 31%, and then with the state budget, it's at 42 and 45% for the next year. We won't receive that amount of money because of that some certain. We're estimating it'll actually be about 38%, but 38% is definitely better than 31%. And it's important in that it has helped us close that budget hole. In addition to that, categorical aid reimbursement for high-cost students, there's not a lot of them, but that has an increase as well, which will help us to cover the costs for those special education students that have high needs that are attending our schools. Federal budget has just been unpredictable and continues to be that way, but from an operation fund, we really don't rely on the federal budget that much. It's really more for school nutrition and the school nutrition funding, which is important from the standpoint is that if we don't receive that money, it needs to come from somewhere, and that would be from the operating, which would take away from programs and services. So that's a little scary, but hopefully that will stabilize and we won't continue to have the roller coaster that we've had. You always know we try to align our budget priorities to our strategic plan, and then looking at those things, what we do, and you remember we had our budget priorities, and what I would say with that is like the important thing for us is like going to the grocery store. You don't go to the grocery store with a list of the things that you're not going to buy. You go to the grocery store with those things that are on your list, put those most important things in the budget first, and then we can fill in with everything else. The Onalaska per member revenue limit, this is interesting in that seeing what this amount will be for our district, and this is a known amount for this upcoming year, and comparing that to state statistics. So looking at the lowest amount per for a district, and then the highest and the median and the average. And with that, so just going with that, like for us, that revenue limit's about 38 million. That low number, and what I'm doing is taking that number times our membership, because that's the amount we're funded per student. On the low end, it'd be about $2 million less. On the high end, it would be 68 million. Like, that's a crazy amount of swing. And the average is 32 million and the median is 30 million. So what that's really demonstrating for us is in 1993 is when revenue limits went into effect. And ever since that time, we've been frozen because everybody's gotten the same increase. And prior to that, it was all over the board on what people were spending per student. So periodically, the state will bring up the low revenue limit ceiling. You've heard me talk about that before. It's like, it's a ceiling, but it's really a floor. And we've been pushed up because of that, because we're not spending, up at 68 million. But it's just kind of interesting to put this into perspective of, we're not a high spending school district. We're near the bottom. Then when we combine the state and local factors, our membership is predicted to drop by 46 students. Our revenue limit increase itself is projected to come in about at 400,000. And I should have said right off the bat, the only thing I can guarantee you with all of this is wrong. Because all of this will be finalized when we get our numbers in. It's just our best estimate at this point in time. And the approach that we take is not lowballing it so that the information comes in better than projected. We try to get it as close as we can to build the budget. So some of this might be too high, some of it might be too low. That special education increase, as I said earlier, that's really helping us this year, close that funding gap. And the operating referendum of 200,000 that to help fund that, what inflation doesn't cover. And then with that, we were able to implement some high strategic budget initiatives for this upcoming year. You remember, like, all of the stuff that we're doing with Lisha's area, with the reading and student management, and remember we talked about some of those things recently, which are really important to move our needle forward. Declining enrollment, not just a local issue. 71% of the school districts are experiencing this, so we're not alone in that boat. What helps us is open enrollment. Looking at this slide of knowing how that funding for open enrollment in and out, and we're on the positive side on that. And last year, we had a very good year in that open enrollment in was more than what we expected, and open enrollment out was less than what we expected. So it helped. If you remember right, we had projected a budget deficit for 24-25. We didn't have that. And this is a good reason why. The open enrollment helped fund that deficit that we had been projecting. For this upcoming year, the increase in open enrollment should also help us from a funding perspective of closing that budget hole. There's a lot of numbers on this sheet, but yet what I want you to concentrate on is just some of these dollar amounts and the percentages of changes, and just seeing, like, where are the percentage of changes happening, and how does that all shake out between our revenue limit, our open enrollment transfer for those students coming in and going out, and then the voucher amounts for the different levels in that. I'm going to move forward to, we went through these at our June 23rd meeting, so I'm not going to go through these again because most of this has been just updated a little bit. So I'm going to move on, unless you have a question. I could talk about this all night. So, I'm happy to talk about it, and I want to. What's important to me is that you, as board members, feel like you understand the budget and that you can talk with others about it. And so I struggle with, like, providing you enough information to have that knowledge, but not so much that it's overwhelming. But the preliminary budget summary, The revenue limit increase doesn't cover the cost of meeting operating expenses. And the voucher increase, that won't affect our budget per se. That's an in and an out, but it will impact our local taxes. Our 200,000 operating referendum increase helps close that inflationary gap. And the increase in special education reimbursement is really important for us this year. That really helped close that budget hole. Then, in addition to that, the open enrollment is also helpful, as I said before. Capital referendum, it helps address some of those deferred maintenance things, so we're not taking that out of our operating budget, we're taking it through the referendum. And as always, our staff's efforts to conserve funds just helps set us up for the next year, and that's really important as well. So our estimated levy by components, there is a change, a 5.4% increase and a close to $1.4 million increase. While that's an increase of the last 4 years, it's the second lowest. Last year, we had the lowest amount of increase at 3.5%, and that was a year that the state put a bunch of money into state equalization aid. And on those years when we have money going into state equalization aid, it buys down those local taxes, so it really helps. But the prior 2 years, both in dollar amounts and percentage, were more than what at this point I'm projecting for the next year, which is much better than what I had expected. I expected this budget year with no add to the state equalization aid to be much more catastrophic. And again, it's early. We don't know. We've got a lot of budget components to come in yet, but our best guess at this point in time, this is what we're seeing. And this is just a visual to help us understand, again, that important relationship between state equalization aid and local property taxes. There's a direct and inverse relationship between them, and then some of these things are outside our revenue limit that are waiting. The vouchers and the community service fund are entirely at the local level. So with the, another question that I think is important for us to talk about is the impact of the city of Onalaska's tax reassessment, because that, for those of you that live in the city of Onalaska, when you got that communication from the city, probably got a little nervous. And the important thing to remember is that the way that we apportion our levy is that the Department of Revenue, for any entity that has that crosses municipal boundaries. So we're in 5 different municipal boundaries: City of Onalaska, Town of Madera, Hamilton, Town of Onalaska. There's another one.
City of La Crosse, did you say?
Yeah, City of La Crosse. City of La Crosse. It's the smallest one, but I forgot that one. So because we cross those municipalities, if we did not levy our levy based on equalized value, some would be paying more than their fair share and some would be paying less. So within the municipality, they distribute the levy based on assessed value. But we apportion it to each of those municipalities based on equalized value. What does that mean? That means that the Department of Revenue takes and looks at the sales that have happened in that municipality for the last year, and then they do a mathematical calculations to say, well, regardless of what your assessed value is, this is what we really think this municipality is worth. So in essence, what we're doing is we're treating each municipality as though they had a reassessment that year, even though they didn't. So in the case of the city of Onalaska, in the prior years, it was more because the Department of Revenue is thinking that it's more. So theoretically, it really shouldn't change that much for any individual person. What's going to matter is that how did your change for those in the city of Onalaska, how did it change in relation to this average change of 28%? And if your personal change was less than 28%, it means that you are owing less of the total levy. If it's more than 28%, you're owing more of the levy. So it's kind of your slice of the pie within that municipality. But again, remember, the size of the pie is determined by the Wisconsin Department of Revenue based on sales for every year. It's not based on assessed value. So it's really just a process of teeing it up. And we'll see that most, I'll go through this again when we set our original levy, because that's where you can see each municipality's value and how those change, and I think it will make the most sense that. But I guess at this point, what I want to make sure that people understand is the assessed value. We're already apportioning our levy to each municipality as though they had a reassessment, even when they did not. So our estimated mill rate or levy rate at this point in time is projected to decrease. But again, I always encourage you not to concentrate on this, to concentrate instead on the dollar amount of change, because as a municipality that's not adding a lot of new value, we don't have a lot of new property that's taking on that additional amount of tax levy. So what I'm suggesting for tonight is that we adopt the levy to the budget to take to the budget hearing. And again, it's very preliminary at this point in time. We need to have student count, open enrollment in and out to determine the budget yet. Then to determine the levy, we need to know the state equalization aid, property values, and vouchers. Those are all the things that are still outstanding that we need to know before we can finalize this budget. So, are there any more, are there any questions on the presentation before I flip to the other document? Again, we're gonna have this for 2 more times, so we'll go through it in more detail at that point in time. So what we're asking that the board take action on, and you approved a budget similar to this on June 23rd. This is the budget that we would take to the budget hearing. At the budget hearing, I'll go through more of the actual numbers in the different areas, just like we review when we do our quarterly updates.
Appreciate your effort to thread the needle, as you said in the beginning, trying to, you know, there's very different experiences up here, and then you have like ocean trench level depth of knowledge, and then I don't, for sure. So I know how difficult that is to thread that, but I think you do that very well. So just thank you for that effort to do all that.
Thank you.
Team, any questions for Janet? Okay, Kristen, could we take a roll call vote, please? Oh,
I'll make a motion to
Thanks, Ann.
approve the preliminary.
Moving along.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Approve the preliminary 2025-26 budget to be presented at the budget hearing on October 13th, 2025. That can be found in enclosure 16 titled preliminary budget.
I'll
Second.
Motion by Ann, seconded by Tracy, to approve the 25-26 preliminary budget as presented by Janet and in detailed in enclosures 16. Now, could we do a roll call vote, please?
Bridget,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Tracy,
Yes.
and Aaron.
Yes. Motion, and that preliminary budget is adopted. Thank you. Are there any requests to remove items from the consent agenda for separate consideration?
Seeing none, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Mark, to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any further questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The consent agenda is approved. We have no further business.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Tracy, to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all.